This is what we're going to talk about today for the next, hopefully, 45 minutes. I'm going to have some interaction, start thinking about who would like to volunteer in maybe like 10 minutes. I promise. They even gave me some amazing prizes to give away, so bribery always helps. But we're going to talk about military spouses, and maybe not in the context that you're used to or that maybe you even walked into this room expecting. So I think it's going to be really interesting. So thank you for being here. I know you had a choice. I know it is day 2. I felt some struggle this morning in the audience. So I know we are just here, as most of us entrepreneurs, like we know the grit and the hustle, and I feel like we just have to even bring that to these types of conferences. So a little bit about me, why I am up here, who I am. I am an active duty Army spouse. We've made 9 PCS moves in the past 15 years. I'm a mom to 2 boys, 6 and 11. And for the past about 16 months, have been running Mad Skills, which is a company where we've been able to bring some innovation and creativity into solving and helping solve military spouse unemployment. And so we do that by creating virtual work opportunities for the talented spouses, by working with companies who have distributed teams, meaning they understand remote work, and then bringing the military spouse talent into a place where that can be accessible, because that is not accessible at the level that you would think it is. Even on LinkedIn, there is no search criteria for military spouse like there is a veteran. So organizations who do know the worth often have a really hard time finding professionally skilled military talent, or talent that can be educated and certified to become up to that level. A little bit about my own struggle, because I think the spouses in the room will identify very easily, and maybe some of you here haven't heard some of these stories, and that's why these conversations happening here today are so important. Every military spouse business owner sitting here could probably get up here for 8 hours and entertain you with the stories that they have. So my first personal story with employment was literally out the door as a new spouse, Fort Rucker, Alabama. Not the hotbed of opportunity that some places can offer. But I had an undergrad degree, brand new spouse, I wanted a job. So I walked into the ACS employment office, asked, what can I do? I'm ready to sign up, like who's gonna hire me? And the lady, without even verbalizing anything to me, pointed to a board behind her. And the board behind her was like a 1970s bulletin board with so many like pin marks, like the chunks of cork were falling out, with 2 note cards. One note card was cleaning services, and the other card was driving troubled children to their court-appointed psychology appointments. So I had an undergrad in human ecology. I was like, I'll take that one. So I applied for the driving of children back and forth to court-appointed appointments, interviewed in the Popeyes food court at Fort Rucker, and was not selected or hired. And it was because I was told, you're a spouse, your husband's in flight school, we know you're leaving in 6 to 8 months, and that's just not good for the children. Like, okay, sweet. So that was my very first experience. So in the ingenuity of military spouses, where I ended up was a barista for the flight school students coming through the gate at 4 o'clock in the morning, owned by a military spouse who was a dentist who could not get a job and started her own coffee shop franchise business. So, I look back to that first story, and that just tells me everything you need to know about the military spouse community. When there is struggles or there are things that are not going our way, there's gonna be another military spouse there to help you. And that is the tribe that is here today. And that's a part of why I'm so thankful that that tribe is here. Because somebody asked me this morning at breakfast, is it hard to have these conversations and talk about yourself as business owners? And I'm like, in this place? No, this is where this is happening. In the mainstream, when we go back to our homes and back to our bases, those are weird conversations because people don't see us in the mainstream. And so that's part of what we're going to talk about today to kind of change some of that conversation. So to put us in the mindset, I would like to play a game. Somebody advised me against this. I was like, whatever, we're going for it. Everybody's tired. We're going to get some interaction. I now have prizes, so it's even better. We're going to play a game of Never Have I Ever. If you've never played this game before, usually it's best suited with maybe some Hero Vodka American Bourbon. We're not going there. Some of you are still recovering from last night. But we're going to play this, and it's a really cool game because it makes you confront the truth. And it makes you confront the truth in a way that you're excited and you volunteered to confront the truth, usually because there's a weird reward. Take a shot, high five. Somebody is excited that you're spilling your beans and you're going to be telling them everything that you have done and that you haven't done in the context that they're presenting it. So if I could have 8 brave volunteers, anybody? I've seated some of you, so you better follow through for me. Go ahead and come on up, and literally you're all going to do is have a sign. One sign says, I have, other side says, I have never. And I'm just going to rapid fire 8 questions out, and you're just going to flip. John, get up here. Yes, please. Well, I'm calling you out because he has taken the initiative and has hired an entire team of spouses to run his sales department. So big clap, yeah.
I know that I am in the right room because there's nothing like military spouse. When I was in the Army, and I'm not going to take just a second here, but I was not learning it. But after coming in this room and
All right, somebody's going to have to give John one.
I'm married
Okay.
now, and my wife is very excited about the future. We're excited about the future. And
Awesome. All right, somebody give John a card. So somebody's going to have to unvolunteer. Wow, when does that happen? Oh, these are military spouses. They know how to volunteer. Okay, awesome. So the rules here are you have to promise to be honest. This is not, I've learned today that I shouldn't have done this or that I've never done this before. This is never have I ever in the entire lifespan of your life, okay? And you have to promise to be honest. It's going to get a little awkward probably with some of the conversations. And the rule for you all is this is a judgment-free zone because you're not up here, and I guarantee you you're going to be answering the questions in the same way. So, very first one, easy. This is going to be practice so you can figure out have I or have I not and which way to flip the sign. So, never have I ever met a military spouse. So everybody should say, I have. Okay, good, we got it. You never know. Sometimes you have to give people some practice. Second question. Never have I ever, anticipation here as I flip my sheet, said, if you're a spouse, in introduction, I'm just a spouse. Or if you're not a spouse, have you said, so are you just a spouse or do you work? See it. Ever, yep. Okay. Never have I ever met a spouse at a formal military function and have totally overlooked them, whether you're a spouse or not. All right, here comes a good one. Those were kind of teasers. Never have I ever hired a military spouse or been paid as a hired military spouse and paid them less than their civilian peer would have been paid. Yes, so if you're a spouse, if you've been paid less in that situation, you have. If you've hired spouses and you paid them less than their civilian peers are paid, you have. Not in relationship with us, but okay. Never have I ever asked a spouse to volunteer for something that they should have been paid for. Or if you're a spouse, you volunteered for something outside of the normal call of duty that you should have been paid for, usually related to your skill set or your experience. All right, kind of a fun one. Never have I ever used stock photo of high heels, baby shoes, and combat boots. Okay. We're going to talk about that, so don't let that one go. Never have I ever referred to military spouses as she or wives. Yeah, I mean, as spouses, we've all done that too. So, okay, awesome. I have 2 prizes. I don't know how to do this because you all volunteered. But here, pretty maroon long coat, you please. Free coffee, amazing sponsor, and John, because I made him come up. Thank you guys so much. You can keep those or throw them away or do whatever you want with them. Thank you for being the token there, John. Awesome. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is the value of a spouse. And we're going to talk about this in also a monetary value and a little bit of the culture of volunteerism that a lot of us have been raised as military spouses in contradiction or in effort with learning how to be paid for the skill set and the experience that we've created for ourselves or been given the opportunity to experience along the way. To preface that, I 100% believe in volunteering. I believe there is a cultural experience, social responsibility, exposure to the world. Volunteering is very critical, especially in the military spouse community. We know when units deploy, who is keeping the world put together. It is the spouse community. And there's a call of duty that we respond to in that. And I understand that part, and that is not the part that I have concerns or issues with. It's when we've started to create this culture of explaining volunteering instead of career pursuit or helping a spouse find a way to have a career that's going to work in their mobile lifestyle. And that has been done in very many ways, and I think sometimes it's a lack of resource within those organizations that are supporting to even know where to go or where to do that. And that was a big part of why I wanted to start Mad Skills, is delivering those direct connections, because I'm out of the box. I have no red tape. I have no bureaucracy. Like, I can create those relationships to start to make that happen. And we all can, and that has to be a part of the conversation. I volunteered in some capacity since I was 11. I encourage my children to. So this is in no way bashing volunteering. It is a very, very, very important part of our community, but it is also very separate from paid career employment opportunities for the spouse community. I had a conversation with somebody about VMIS. How many of you have just logged half of your life as a spouse in VMIS? And that's, so if you don't know what VMIS is, it's like a volunteer tracking. I don't even know if they use it anymore, but during the overturn of constant rotational deployments, when I was kind of growing up as a spouse, like, that's where you logged. And that's a really great experience, and there is a really great opportunity to take that and translate your skill sets. But the problem comes when we tell a spouse, no, let me find you a volunteer position that's easier. The solutions are never easier, right? So we have to continue to have those conversations. Because military spouses are not free labor. They really, really are not. And I know there's generations that have just survived on the support of military spouses not being paid. We do that in our families. We do that for our communities. I can't say enough how there is a line there, and there is a very separate conversation that needs to happen. So I know as business owners, a lot of us have tight cash flow. We have tight budgets. So where does that put you? I've started a company. I've talked with a lot of really great business owners in here, like, okay, I need to start up a team. Don't come to Mad Skills and expect to have a volunteer force. There are places that you can go for that, but I'm very passionate about paying spouses and bringing in that second income and allowing them to increase that with a paid work opportunity. So what happens? How does that work out? You assume a spouse is desperate. They have a skill set you know you can, I say, take advantage of, not always with ill intent, but you pay minimally and you expect maximum output. Why? Because you know the spouse can do it. You know that spouse is going to deliver, especially if they're certified and specialized in what you're asking them to do, but they need to be paid for it. Whole different conversation. But when families start to go to transition out of the military community and a spouse doesn't have a paid career, that puts those families in like really dire situations. I worked in the veteran startup employment space for 5 years, so I saw this happening. Like, not only were the veterans struggling, but there was this whole sidebar happening where the spouses were also like, oh my gosh, I haven't had a paid job in 25 years. I'm no longer relevant anywhere. I have 3 PhDs, but now I'm gonna have to go be a checker or a cashier at Kohl's because none of this makes sense to anybody. So that conversation has to happen. And I have loved to see over the past 5 years how that conversation everybody talks about veterans in transition, and that has really increased over the past 5 years. So I think if we can start to bring spouses into that conversation, 5 years from now, like, oh my gosh, like, what could be happening? And if you can't afford a military spouse, just tell them you can't afford a military spouse. If they're a freelancer or a business owner, they're gonna understand that. What you don't need to do is add the stipulation on, well, you've outpriced yourself in the spouse community, and I can get it for less. Just go get it for less. Don't tell me that, because in the military community, we are very small, and especially as spouses who are business owners, we share everything, you guys. We share everything because it's how we thrive, and it's how we learn, and it's how we survive. So if you can't afford something, you just can't afford it, fine. I've had to make those decisions as a business owner, but I would never tell somebody that they have outpriced their self. If they bring you the skill set and the credentials and the experience, and they should be paid that because their cohorts in the civilian space are paid that, then that's what they need to be paid. And that's why I'm really passionate about placing those spouses in those positions to where they can be paid. Guess what? Bloggers are not paid $7 a blog out in the civilian community. Marketing consultants are not paid $50 monthly retainers for 120 hours of work. That is not how, I say, outside of the bubble works. And until we start changing that conversation within ourselves, within our own community, we can't expect anybody else outside of the community to understand that or to even want to bring themselves up to that level as well. So I have 3 points today, and at the end of every point, we're going to do a couple what ifs. And these what ifs are not solutions, they're talking points. I want you to leave this, it is my only goal, for you guys to leave today talking within your organizations, talking to people on airplanes, like, oh my God, did you know military spouses are, whatever. Like, just start having conversations. So the first what if for the value is, what if we paid spouses with experience and skills the same as their civilian cohorts? Easy. Think about it. Think about the social impact. Think about the quality of life that would be happening, allowing spouses to continue to move. Well, with what we do in remote work, if you're brick and mortar, you're hiring spouses, same story. Because like I said, until we start to set that level, we are here in a place where we are military influencers. I am 100% confident that the brilliance in this room and the room next door can make this happen at a much, much larger level. And what happens when families have extra money to spend and they're happy? They have extra money to spend on your businesses, on your products. Like, it's a whole economic cycle happening there that I'm sure somebody could do a whole presentation on just alone in itself. All right, so we're going to talk about those baby boots and high heels real quick. We're going to talk about branding, and that's my little Transformers geeky moment. More than meets the eye. My son would be really sad that I just did that like that. But there is so much more than meets the eye when you talk about military spouses and what their products or services are branded to them, and most people are missing the point. And the whole point of just branding alone is an emotional connection. And if you think about it in the way that military spouses are branded to, this is not the emotional message I need to be receiving. So we're going to talk about that. And I don't care if somebody leaves here with a new business idea today. Consider this a freebie because I don't have time to do it. If we could have a stock photo opportunity that's like Pexels, somewhat, everybody's like, oh, I've had that idea. All right. Okay. Next year, somebody can unveil the Pexels. If you don't know what Pexels then is, it's PEXELS.com, and I'll show you some examples. It's just a really modern stock photo. It's 100% free. If we could have some military-focused versions of that, all of our lives would be so much better and so much happier. So I'm going to show you an example. This one. So I think this is really sweet. If you are a mom life blogger, if you have a product that is baby-focused, perfect. If you are talking to a spouse about a career or a training opportunity or a certification track, this is not the image to use in your branding. This image does not tell me you see me as powerful and confident, and there's a lot of confidence in babies and moms in power. That's not where I'm going, so you can just let that one go. I'm talking about it in the bigger sense of the purpose and what they're trying to reach and trying to connect. And this image was recently sent to me on somebody that was interested in being a client, and I was like, oh my God, I'm about to talk about this. I can't just let this go. And so I just had to take a moment and say, I have to, if I'm going to stand up here at a military influencer conference and say we have to change this, I'm going to have to let them know that this is not cool. So I wrote a very kind, you can give people advice in very kind ways, but I let them know, what you're offering here is an incredible opportunity. You are doing yourselves no service by using this image. And even one of the hero images on their site is a soldier in uniform with a kid on his shoulder, and the spouse is way over here on the banner. And I was like, if you are targeting the spouse, put that spouse dead center. That camo doesn't even need to be on there. So we'll talk about that in a second when we talk about the camo thing. So these are just some of my suggestions. Oh my gosh, look at those happy, strong, powerful, diverse people. Would you not rather see that? Mainstream branding is using these. Why is the military community not? I think we need to think about that, and I think we need to ask ourselves why. Some of these, if you're like, oh, I can't afford iStock, that's okay. These are all free. I got these from Pexels. So there's a lot of opportunity to improve on that side of the story.
So not free, they are Creative Commons.
Okay, the lawyer here.
I'm not actually functioning as a lawyer. I'm not licensed in the US. But what I will give you as a piece of policy advice is that
Get in trouble. Yeah, and just don't go to Google Images and like just grab images and use those. So yes, sorry, thank you, that was very important. You should do a session on how to stay legal next year. I have all these session ideas. Somebody taking notes? Okay, second part of branding is wives. While the spouse community is predominantly female, that's just the way it is right now, there is a population of male spouses out there. Are there any male spouses in the room? Yes, awesome, woohoo! I saw somebody raise their hand back there earlier. So keep that in mind. If your product is female specific, fine, that's your target user market. I totally understand that. But if you are spouse facing and spouse focused, be sure it is inclusive, because the spouse community is just a subset of mainstream culture. Every race, religion, relationship, everything that happens in mainstream culture is a part of our community. And until we start showing that visually, talking about that conversation, then outside of the community, people aren't gonna know. When Liza and I, before we launched Mad Skills last September, October, we went out to California. I used LinkedIn. I just wrote people at companies and I said, hey, I'm coming to the Valley. Could I ask you some questions about the military community? Most people will say, oh yeah, sure, they wanna help. I don't think they were prepared, because when we walked in, our very first question was, thank you for your time, what do you know about military spouses? And the hesitancy and the flush faces, it really put people on the spot. And I didn't want to do it in an aggressive manner, but it told us everything we needed to know. Especially, I don't know if any of you have experience in Silicon Valley, it is very far removed from the military community. A lot of people have never met a veteran. They have never met a military spouse. So their ideals and stereotypes of who the spouse community is are maybe 50s housewives, maybe replications of some of the horrible memes and stereotypes we all hate. I'm not even saying the words because it'll really get me upset really fast. But on top of that, no idea that there was unskilled talent that had been untapped. So the more that we have these conversations, the more the world will know about that, and it will continue to change. Again, that's the inside of the bubble popping and going outside of the bubble kind of scenario that we need to move with. So second what if for this is, what if the empowerment and the self-led fulfillment and the quality of life and the reflections of cultures, what if all of those were very strategic parts of your branding? If you're not military facing, you should still have strategic branding. But if you are in the military, think about those things. What is it you want your community or the people buying your stuff to feel? Think about Coca-Cola. Horrible product for your body, horrible. But you watch those commercials and you're like, yes, I look so awesome when I'm drinking my Coke. I look so great. That is not how we brand in the military community. So we need to think about that, and that conversation needs to start to change. And if you don't know, hire a spouse and pay them well to help you with your branding. Put a focus group of military spouses together. Oh, I don't know where to find them. You're just probably not looking in the right place. There's plenty, 1.1 million spouses, 15 million veteran spouses. They are out there. Host a focus group. Do it on a Zoom video call. Invite people, give them the link, and let them rip your brand apart. I promise you, you will get the best insight about facing to the spouse community or even the military community as a whole by allowing those interactions and allowing those conversations to happen. So this is the big scary what if for branding. What if we just let go of all camo when we were talking to military spouses? I get veteran branding. I was in the space for 5 years. It's a very important part of the identification. But I don't need when I'm shopping, my husband is not there next to me like, babe, buy this product. Well, maybe, but those are the ones I say no to. But I don't need him there to give me permission or to remind me that I have some connection to buy this. Dishwasher commercials don't have a husband next to them while they're washing the dishes saying, are you washing the dishes, babe? Is that a great product? But that's when we show, and we're talking to spouses, and we show spouses active duty standing in camo next to the spouse, that's kind of almost what you're saying. You're this person, but I know that you're also this person, and that identity crisis is huge in the spouse community. Huge. So there's a lot of things that we can change just kind of inherently and kind of quietly to start to change some of those brain patterns and how we start to visualize, and not only for the outside of the bubble, but also internally ourselves as military spouses, because there's a lot of struggle out there. And I think once we start to do that, the quality of life that is often talked about endlessly in programming and in development for the spouse community, some of that may just kind of happen organically. I think if we can start to send those messages quietly and supportively from the ground up versus come to this workshop, your quality of life is going to be improved because we've spent money on it and we have to check the box and everybody's attended, now everybody's happy. That's just not how it works. It has to kind of come from the bottom up and start to create that conversation. So next one is, where are the spouses? It's been really interesting just in the 15 years I've been a spouse, like how the culture and the dynamics have changed. And I feel like that change is fast, but our response to the change is like 20 years behind. There's like this lag happening. And I've seen it in every, I guess I'm like a seasoned spouse now at 15 years in. I really don't like to admit that, but apparently I've hit that mark. But there's a lot of things happening. FRGs are fighting to have people come to meetings. Coffee groups struggle to have people to show up. And community events that are even sponsored to spouses are like, why is nobody here? So I'm going to give a shout out to MilSpouse Fest and Jen Pilcher. They just had 500 spouses show up at an event at Fort Campbell. Like, there's something happening there that is connecting to the spouse community and getting them to come. So if you're not familiar with that, talk to her about it. See what they're doing. See what type of sponsors they have. Are they maybe different than everybody we see everywhere else? Like, those are the things that are going to connect. But also social media. That is where the spouses are. And Facebook Lives are your best friend. Best friend. Facebook Lives are amazing because they will reach exactly where you want it to reach if you've built up that community or you ask people. And I have been so excited to see organizations start to take advantage of that. So you have to let go of your webinars where you give somebody a link and they schedule, and then they have to remember to come to the software, and oh, you had to download the software, so now you're 5 minutes late, and then you just give up and you don't come in. Like, that happens all the time. And it's not going to keep somebody's attention. Take that content. You can use Zoom, broadcast it live. Happy to talk about that if you have questions. Do Facebook Live and do it purposely. Make it a part of your content strategy. Deliver it directly to the spouse community. And I guarantee you, you will get a lot of feedback. AUSA did an incredible spouse-facing event. Patty's here in the room this summer. And I was so excited. I was like, yes, they're using Facebook Live to deliver these people who have passion and experience and have all kinds of things to share with the community. That being said, I do love tradition. I do love those parts of the military community and the spouse community like that we do hold on to because there is something just inherently powerful about that. I kind of have a weird fascination with antiques and vintage items. This may be too much information, but almost like a telepathy thing. I can be like driving down the road and see a thrift shop. I'm like, oh, there's something awesome in there today. I think I'm going to have to stop in there. I've gotten like 1910 beautiful typewriters there. I found Peter Frampton's lost jacket. Awesome story. I'll have to tell you that sometime. So I have an appreciation for the things that we do hold on to as military spouses, and I think those things are important, but we can't let the fear of changing or let that overshadow what we know needs to change in order to serve the people that we are and to serve the people that most of us in this room are very dedicated and passionate about serving. So the what ifs for here are, what if you tried 2 Facebook Lives? I would love for everybody to leave with 2 ideas, even if you are just a marketing consultant. Yeah, Erin, I'm talking about you. She's just started using Facebook Lives as her own business and doing it for clients and not necessarily even forward-facing to the spouse community, but it's just a really powerful tool to use, and it's free. And Facebook has things coming where if you've shown them in your algorithms that you like Facebook Lives, there's cool new things coming out soon, so just be paying attention to that. It's going to be kind of cool. And if we start to do all that and the community responds to you, then you know you're in the right place and you can start to take those data points because everything that you do on social media, you can track. If you don't know how to track it, find a spouse, hire them, they'll tell you how to track it. I know there's a spouse in the room that's interested in data analysis and empowering your company. That's Emily Burke. Get in touch with her. Nobody knew I was plugging them today, by the way, so sorry, but it's all good. So, and I know I said if you're not finding spouses and you're probably not looking in the right place, the other part of that conversation is there is a lot of red tape and barriers sometimes to getting into where we know physically the spouses are. And I'm very visual, so as soon as somebody says something like out of the box, I have this weird visual illustration of what that means. So I'm going to share that with you because I think those of us here in this room are out of the box. We are all just like running around this box, totally free, scot-free, innovating and creating and networking. And there's still this box happening, and there's 3 types of people in this box. There are people in the box who are trying to scramble up the ledge, kind of peek over like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. And then there's people pulling that back down, and they cannot get out of that box. Or there's people in the corner who are mad, and they're just standing in one of those 4 corners of the cardboard box because they are just frustrated, or they're grumpy, or they're jealous, who knows, but they're in the corner of the box. And then the worst ones in the box are the ones laying down on their back, looking up at the entire wide sky above them, all the opportunity in the world, but they're just laying there, and they have no desire to change, and they have no desire to do anything. So I want you guys to leave with that today, thinking about who are you individually, what do your organizations do, the organizations that you support, that you run, what type of box person are you? Are you out already? Moving, innovating, networking, creating, or are you one of those three kind of struggling? And if you are, how can that change? How you can support the other layers of people in the box and really start to change that narrative and change that conversation. Because I have no doubt, like I said at the beginning, with the brilliance of people in this room, 5 years from now, this conference could be, you just have no idea what this conference would be. There is like this undercurrent of spouse stuff happening that is just about to explode. I don't know how, I don't really know what that looks like, but you could feel that here. In one of the first sessions yesterday, they're like, how many spouses are there? Like a lot of part of that room raised their hand. So that is not something that can be overlooked. It's really something that can be harnessed by the other organizations around us, continuing to support each other through it all. And I'm really excited to see what happens in 5 years, just like I've seen the change with the veteran community. So in closing, take all those what ifs with you. All those what ifs, talking points, thought points, and kind of think of it as like a drive-through. You've come to Starbucks, you ordered, you walked in this room, you made the choice to come here today, whether you're regretting it or not, you came. I've handed the coffee out the window to you. You can drink it, you can love it, you can be a champion of it, you're gonna come back, you're gonna tell others about it, or you're gonna turn the corner and toss it out the window because it was not what you ordered. I understand. Or there's the third option where you're gonna take a sip, it's gonna kind of sit there and get stale, and then it's gonna kind of start to smell, and you're gonna be like, oh, maybe I should have paid attention to that like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So take all of these what ifs, take all of these points with you, and just really think about it and start to have conversations on social media, within each other. Like I would really, and send those to me. If you have questions, ideas, ways to connect that makes this a more successful opportunity, there's a huge network in here that could all make something very, very, very successful for you, whether you're a spouse or you're not. So I just want to thank you all for being in here today, for allowing me to share just the passion that I have for kind of changing the conversation. And there are so many more conversation points and many things that we could talk about. So I encourage you all to start talking about it much more publicly as well. And that's it. Thank you so much. I am happy. I think we have some time. I don't think there's anybody in the room to tell me. Oh, yeah, she said good. Okay, I do have a couple more. I have one more prize here. A whole case of somebody who's tired can use this the rest of the day till they get home. If anybody has any questions, I would love to take questions. Sure. I think we're a small enough room you can stand up and yell or...
How do you feel about branding in terms of, I love what you said about the camo situation, that's been driving me crazy for years. How do you feel about it on the veteran side, right? Because, veterans wear their uniform to work, but their dads and their friends and their brothers, and they play basketball and they go golfing, and, do you foresee kind of, as an organization, Blues Our Families, being able to eventually shift so that we can do a little bit more imagery of the family and kind of the messaging behind that without having to always say, to know he's a veteran, he always has to be in his uniform. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's different sides of that conversation. Like if you're selling a product and you want somebody to identify and be called out to that, I think that's important. Like that's a big conversation in the veteran transitioning space. Like I'm not a veteran, so I can't speak my emotional connection to that. I'm sure somebody in this room can, probably very eloquently. But also the ability to show the diversity outside of uniform is a huge opportunity for organizations who do serve the entire scope of what the community is. Veterans don't need to be reminded that they're a veteran by camo. Just like spouses don't need to be reminded they're a spouse by their spouse in camo. So I think there's just a small thing to think about when you're not having those conversations. Yes, Catherine, or Kathleen. I don't talk about spouses as military spouses, which I know sounds strange because that's part of our whole brand. But if you talk about a spouse as the talented person they are with the experience and the skill set they have, that's when that conversation, it's just an easy change. And I think that can kind of happen like really organically. Like, don't focus on when you're talking about spouses in a specific employment or scenario. Well, they've just been through 15 deployments and they've moved 22 times. Like, that doesn't need to be a part of a hiring initiative conversation. Like, we do not even bring that into the conversation. When they come to us, they know their spouses. People are coming to Blue Star families. They know their military families. You don't need to throw those like evident things out there, especially when you're trying to focus on something on a more positive note or kind of changing that conversation. Yes.
So my husband is active duty, and he said something recently that really, I still don't know how to respond to. So I'm hoping you can help me with this. I'm a writer, I'm a professional freelance writer for the military community, and he told me recently that my experience is based on his credentials
Yeah.
as an active duty service member, and that I want to grow as a writer and pursue this as a long-term career. That he's not sure he's on board with that because then it might require him to get promoted so that it would look better for me.
That maybe he's not sure how adaptable you are. I have every confidence you can write about whatever you want to write about. I've actually had that thought too, right? Like, people are like, well, you wouldn't be where you were if you hadn't moved 15 or 9 times in 15 years, if you hadn't been through deployments. And I mean, that's just a life story. It's just like somebody who's been through something really super traumatic. They don't have to be identified with what they're going to do in the future by that super traumatic event that happened to them. So, I mean, it's a part of who we are as spouses. It's a part of who we will be. Your brand has the opportunity to tweak if it needs to. Like, it totally is not dependent on, well, this is my interpretation. If your husband was here, we could have a good conversation probably, but that's not dependent on him. I think the cool part about spouses having businesses is you could be your spouse's like either ease to transition by being that second income. You could be their retirement plan. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities there. I mean, it's a part of our life story. We can't change that. And it has empowered many of us to be sitting here right now how we are. But I don't think that you can take that with you when you're moving forward. Yeah, Patty?
How do you coach spouses to know their worth when they're seeking employment? And the reason I say that, my horrible story is that the first time I got offered a job over $50,000, I actually said to the employer, "Are you sure? Because that might be too much.
Yeah.
Can you afford it?"
Yeah.
Stupid, but that's.
How we've done that, because that's happened to us too. The very first spouse that we put in a position last year, it was a after-hours job. She was able to do it when her kids were napping. But it was in her credentialed field, and they paid her a very good amount of money. And she wrote me, she was like, "Is this company legit? Are they trying to scam me?" And I was like, "No, this is what people in Boston and Dallas and Chicago are paid to do what you do. Like, we vetted the company. They're legit. We know them very well. Like, please take the job." But I think like we have to offer those comparisons. Like, tell spouses to go to Glassdoor. Whatever skill set they have, send them to Glassdoor, put in the job description, or if it's a job that they want, that way they know, oh my gosh, I can make $70,000 being a Salesforce admin or a HubSpot certified professional for an organization. I think we have to start showing those comparisons because we do undervalue ourselves. I've done that. When I started doing some retainers for consultants out in California, I asked a company that was kind of mentoring and helping me through it. I was like, "It's like $25 an hour." I was like, "That's a lot of money. Like, is that too much?" And he was like, "I just paid somebody $240 an hour to do that for me." Of course, this is Silicon Valley. That doesn't translate to every market. But I was like, "Oh, wow. Okay, well," I think, who was it? Somebody had the guy, I think it was Ellie, or somebody, I don't remember. We have to put ourselves at that level. Yeah, it was Ellie. Like, you have to put yourselves at the level to qualify. And if we keep undervaluing that, then that's not going to be an option.
So when you determining when you volunteer first before getting your job or so, I know yesterday the Shark Tank thing, our riveter said that, when you knew how to hire, they had someone that volunteered with them for a month and then they decided
Right.
to take them on. So when do you know as a spouse, when it's okay to volunteer first, then to be hired? And an example for myself is before going out to Okinawa, my cousin actually worked for an architecture firm. I had a degree background with it, and I was looking for work, and I'm like, well, my job will be put on hold for the 3 years we're out there. And he said, actually, my company has a project going
mean, volunteer, internships are a real thing. Like, there is, like, a span of life experience where, like, you do volunteer right out the door. But if you've been doing the same job for 20 years or you have 2 degrees and even 5 years experience, unless you just want to, out of the goodness of your heart, like, I would have asked me, like, how much do you pay the other people doing this job? Like, sometimes you just have to give it right back to them. Like, ask the questions to make them confront, like, I'm not free labor. And we have a client that's interested in architects, so I may need to need you pretty soon. All right, one more question?
We do one more.
Okay, one more. Or was that it? Oh, here, we'll go over there.
Hey, Dave Gall from Comcast, NBC Universal. I'm pretty much here because of this panel. Because we're one of those companies.
Woohoo!
We're one of those companies. We don't talk about hiring veterans. We talk about hiring the military community, which includes Guard Reserve, veterans, and military spouses. Includes special benefits and things like that. And I am here specifically because our team was actually created by Martha Soren, who's our chief talent officer and also military spouse up in Philadelphia.
Awesome.
So I would say whoever came up with the idea as far as the stock photo piece, and like where there is a giant need for that. There's a giant need for companies to understand branding, and that all exists here because literally there are companies who are doing it terribly wrong, or they're trying to do great things, but they're doing it the wrong way. And all of y'all can solve that problem and make money doing that. I mean, I don't know how you're gonna do that, but there's a giant need. If you call up a company and say, hey, how many military spouses do you have? And they say, I don't know. You should probably, the next thing you should say, that's a problem, and here's why.
Yep.
Because there's companies that are doing it and crushing it, and you're failing in that respect. So how can I help you? So again, from the the Fortune 40 kind of world, we value military spouse talent. We want more. There's lots of opportunities. But if you're also looking to start your own, continue your own business, there's a need for you. So
Thank you so much. I appreciate what you guys are doing there. All right.
Thank you, Erica.